Hey guys, how you doing? So, in the crowd here tonight or today, who's a Toronto Maple Leafs fan? Put your hand up. So, and keep your hand up if you guys know who Zack Hyman is. Awesome. So on that, I just want to give Zack the opportunity for a minute or two just to kind of intro himself and give you guys an idea of who he is and what his background is.
Sure. Thanks, Sean. Yeah, you guys can hear me now. Perfect. So yeah, I'm Zack Hyman. I play for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm one of the few, I guess, players who like to do things outside of hockey, so to speak. Started a gaming company called 11 Gaming. We'll talk about it today, and we'll go over it. I also write children's books. I have 3 children's books out, so that's just a little bit about myself and my background and my passions. I like to follow my passions, and gaming's one of them, and I guess we'll get into it.
All right, so we're going to start a little bit with Zack's background here. So we'll start with hockey because that's something that everybody here knows. So why hockey, and kind of what's your story there?
Yeah, I think every Toronto kid grows up, idolizing the Toronto Maple Leafs, idolizing playing hockey and hockey players, and I was no different. My dad got me into it when I was young, and I loved it, and I wanted to be a professional hockey player ever since I could remember, and I love the Leafs.
So a bit of a loaded question here. Were you always a Toronto Maple Leafs fan?
Yep.
Well, there you go. If some of you might not know, there's a game out there called NHL 2019. eSports puts it out, and they have player ratings on everybody. Basically, every player is ranked out of 100. So Zack here, the wise guys at EA, decided to give him an 81 rating, which is, I think, 3 behind Nylander. I just kind of wanted to see what your thoughts are on that rating.
No comment. No, it's all good. I grew up loving playing NHL games, so just to be in the game in general was really cool for me. My first year pro, I got to play as myself in the game, and that was really cool.
So we're going to start to move the conversation into eSports and 11 Gaming. I just want a show of hands here. How many in the crowd are familiar with either gaming through their kids or familiar with the term eSports? Just a show of hands here. Okay, so for those of you who aren't familiar with it, esports at its simplest, you can think of it like the NHL for video games. So if you have a shooting game, people are going to attend actually a location to watch these people play. I was on the panel this morning with a couple of guys who were running the team, one of them being Zack. And when we were in Vancouver, when I was in Vancouver, I did this same exercise. And only one guy, about 30 of our biggest retail brokers, had been to an event, and he said it was probably one of the most radical and amazing experiences from a fan loyalty perspective. There were like 30 or 40,000 people cheering for a couple of people watching video games. So that's just a little bit of background as we kind of move on through this. So just a quick question for you. What's your favorite video game, Zack?
Right now it's Fortnite for sure.
How many of you are familiar with Fortnite? Probably the biggest game in the world. Numbers are a little mystic right now, but it's probably going to do between 2 and 3 billion in cash flow for the past 12 months in 2018. So something that I've always kind of wondered is what's the video game culture like in the NHL?
Yeah, it's pretty prominent. I think that when you're an athlete, you look for ways to escape and to get away from your sport. There's a lot of pressures that come along with being an athlete, and video games are definitely an outlet. Not just in the NHL, you see it in the NFL, NBA, MLB. You see guys gravitating towards playing video games with each other. It builds your relationships with your teammates and your friends, and it's definitely something that a lot of guys like to do.
In the Maple Leafs locker room, who would you say is the best gamer?
Yeah, I think I'm out there. Mitch Marner's pretty good at Fortnite too, so it's always fun playing with him.
So a question just about, you obviously have a different perspective than a lot of us being a pro athlete. So I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the intersection between, pro sports and this new sort of era of pro sports being esports and how that kind of fits in.
Yeah, esports is different than pro sports in the sense that the majority of things are online. There obviously are some LAN events, which are in-person tournaments, which are really cool, but unlike traditional sports, a ton of it is received and consumed through online media. And I think that's where a lot of the new generation growing up, that's how they're consuming media is through the internet. And you see Netflix and YouTube and now Twitch, which is the streaming platform you obviously know for gaming, and that's the way that media is being consumed, whereas traditional sports are trying to get into that market or trying to get into the online market, but they have a little bit of a harder time doing it than eSports.
Yeah, and just a quick data point for guys here. So one of the biggest esports events held in Canada was actually held this past summer. It was Dota 2, which is sort of a real-time strategy game. And the prize pool for that was $25 million. I think it's the second largest prize pool in the world. So for professional sports, and it was funded entirely through selling in-game skins. Would be like selling almost shoulder pads in the NHL to people. So which is just kind of highlights sort of the numbers here. So I was also wondering if you could talk a little bit about, 11 Gaming has a roster of players, but just talk a little bit about how they view traditional sports.
Yeah, sure. So at 11 Gaming, we've positioned ourselves in the game of Fortnite right now. We've recognized that Fortnite is currently the most watched game. In addition to that, they've also released $100 million of prize money. We currently have the largest Fortnite roster in the world. We roster 12 players, 5 from Europe and 7 from North America. The way you monetize that is we retain up to 20 to 25% of revenue from all of our players who go and compete in these competitions. Currently, they've released $19 million in competitions. Our players have earned more than $400,000, which is around 2%. There's another $80 million to be released, and we expect our players to do better than they have in the past. So we're excited about that opportunity for sure.
And just on that, maybe talk to the audience a little bit about your path to esports, being a professional athlete and kind of making, not the switch, but, investing and putting something together in this space.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue into, how I got into running my own esports company. Like I said, I was passionate about gaming. I didn't know how to get in. I think that a lot of people don't know how to invest. I wanted to, get in with a company that I could trust, and I met with a bunch of different companies, and there wasn't one that I felt that was run the way that I thought an esports company should be run. So I partnered with one of my friends who's been in esports for 4 or 5 years. He runs it now. His name's Oliver Silverstein, and we decided to make our own company with a couple investors, and that's where the 11 Gaming started. It was branded after my number. I wanted to make sure that people knew that I was in front of it, so I branded it around my number 11, and lots changed since we started then. We've structured our company in a way that it's a holdings company now, which owns 100% of 11 Gaming, and we're actually acquiring a massive company. I can't disclose the name, but we're acquiring 80% of them, and they've been around in the space since 2011. And what we're doing with that company is facilitated. They don't pay any of their players right now. They deliver over 100 million page views a month on YouTube alone. So what we're doing essentially is we're buying a network, and with the name of the company that we're buying, people join that company because they see it as a platform to grow their brand. And while they grow their brand, you can monetize that on sponsorship. So that's the goal on that side of things. With 11 Gaming, we're doing that as well, but we're a new company, so we're really focusing on the pro side of things, and that's with Fortnite's $100 million competition and having the largest roster in the world is pretty cool in such a short time.
Do you apply a lot of the things that you've seen the guys apply behind the Toronto Maple Leafs to as a team and how they run it to how you run 11 Gaming?
For sure. I mean, we have people who work in under 11 Gaming. We have a content creator, Nick Dotto's here. We have a head scout and director of player relations, Matt Biamonte is also here. So it's run like a professional organization in the sense that you have coaches and managers. We have a coach who coaches our players. We have I go on calls with players to make sure that they're okay. It's weird when you have our players are anywhere between 16 and 25, and for the most part they haven't competed in. This is the first time they're competing in events for millions of dollars. So the pressures that come along with that can be hard, and to have an outlet where I deal with that stuff all the time, playing as a professional athlete, dealing with those stresses, and have an outlet to talk to these guys and make sure that they're doing okay mentally, I think is really important. And we're structuring our company just like a professional sports team in the way that we can provide the same services that they provide.
As far as, player agents, what's been your experience, dealing with, traditional agents in sports, and, how agents kind of fit into, the new sort of pro athletes in the esports space?
Yeah, more and more we're dealing with agents coming along. I'd say around 30% of our players have agents, and have agents mostly based in LA who negotiate on behalf of them. And it's like no different than negotiating an NHL contract. You negotiate the same way you do with an agent, and you negotiate salary, you negotiate prize money split, all that stuff.
Interesting. And as far as seeing the owners, guys maybe behind MLSE or other organizations that or your teammates know, what have you kind of seen in terms of NHL owners looking at esports as a space?
Yeah, I think a bunch have invested in other companies. It's all, I think, online. You can see what NHL owners have invested. I think that something that traditional sports is trying to get more into esports. You can see with the NBA 2K League, a bunch of the NBA owners started an NBA 2K League. The Raptors have one. They have a house. I think it's the Uprising, and they play NBA 2K, and they had a whole draft and whatnot. So they're trying to get involved more and more, I think.
And I've seen, just from the perspective of Bay Street, a lot of people have an aha moment for the space, and it's usually when they go and see an event for the first time and they see 30 or 40,000 people screaming at a video game when they're used to seeing maybe their son or their daughter playing in, a bedroom, even though they see them, maybe they're playing Halo or a game like that, but they don't understand there's 30, 40, 50 million people playing at the same time. So just on that, so a lot of people have their aha moment in the space where they go, yes, this is something like, I get it and I want to participate. What was your aha moment?
Yeah, there's a couple. The first one was when I met with Oliver, who's now the CEO of the company, and talked about investing in esports and figuring out where how you make money in it. And what I saw was the majority of the money was coming from sponsorships and coming from viewership. So recognizing that that viewership right now is under monetized, and that the viewership, the sponsorship money hasn't caught up to the viewership, and recognizing that opportunity was something that was, the aha moment being like, I can help facilitate that, help facilitate bringing on big name brands and pairing that with viewership and with numbers. If you're able to provide, sponsors who've had trouble reaching millennials and have trouble reaching a younger audience, and you're able to provide them with that younger audience and provide them with X amount of views, it goes a long way. And that was kind of the aha moment, and that's why I'm so excited about this acquisition that we're making, because we're acquiring a network that can provide upwards of 100 million page views a month, and the ability to pair that with sponsors, using my connection as a pro athlete and using other connections is something that I'm really looking forward to.
That's awesome. And maybe just on that, you mentioned Ollie. Maybe talk a little bit about your team and what you guys have put together from a team perspective at 11.
Sure. Yeah, it's really exciting. Like I said, Fortnite announced $100 million in prize money, so immediately we decided, we can't pass up on the opportunity of building a pro network. So we started with one player named Blue T. He was our first player, and since then, since October, now we have 12 professional players. So we have 7 guys in North America. We have 5 guys in Europe, which equal 12, obviously. And those guys go out and compete for prize money. There's $80 million left on the table now. There's an event coming up in Los Angeles for $500,000 in 2 weeks. We have 3 guys competing in that. And we have 5 guys competing in Poland for another $500,000. And these tournaments are going to be continuously put out. There's $80 million left at stake. And in addition to retaining prize money, we also are building our brand and can sell sponsorship towards this, because as viewership continues to grow in Fortnite and in these competitions, sponsors are going to want to get involved. And you have the ability to pair your pro players and your pro teams with sponsors and have integrated ads, and it's there's a lot of opportunity there for sure.
And just on the sponsors, there's no question that being a pro athlete with Toronto Maple Leafs, certainly one of the highest profile pro organizations in the world, has helped give some cachet to the brand. Maybe talk a little bit about if it's been able to help you in other ways. Being a pro athlete, being affiliated with the Maple Leafs, how's that also been able to help 11 Gaming?
Yeah, 100%. When we first launched, it was pretty amazing to see how much free advertisement we got, just because obviously it's special to play for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and being from Toronto and playing there and doing something outside of the realm. Everybody's interested to see an athlete, doing something different and going into esports. So we got incredible media coverage, which was awesome. And then when you go out and you're starting a new organization like we did, at 11 Gaming, it's hard to get your name out there, and it's hard for people to trust your brand when you're just starting out. So, I'm very forthright with coming and saying that I'm at the head of this company, like I'm the face of it, and I'm okay with that. Like, this is my baby kind of thing, and I think that's important because it provides accountability that this is the real deal and this is a real company, and I'm at the forefront. So when you go and you recruit our players, it really gives them assurance that everything's run the right way and it's run the proper way. And I think that esports right now everybody's high on it and everybody wants to get in, and there can be a lot of smoke and mirrors, and you have to make sure that that if you are investing in a company, it's the right one, and that it's not just smoke and mirrors and they're not false promises. And that's why I think it's important that I put my brand out there with the company.
And do you find with a lot of your players, given that you have an athletic background as a pro athlete, do you find that they trust you more, that they're just more willing to talk to you? It's easier to recruit players maybe than somebody who doesn't have that sort of background?
Yeah, for sure. And they ask me questions about, the stress and pressures that they deal with. I've said these guys go from just playing recreationally to going out there and competing for millions of dollars. And that stress can really weigh on somebody and weigh on their kids too. They're anywhere from 16 to 25 years old. So they to have an outlet and a resource is important, and I'm happy to help them along the way.
There's been a lot of talk about other athletes coming in. Michael Jordan, I think, just put $22 million into a team. There's been, a whole host of other athletes who have done this. Maybe talk to the crowd a little bit about, what the reception in your locker room is like amongst your teammates, and, talking about esports and kind of their view on the space as well.
Yeah, sure. Everybody loves it. I'll show you my phone background. My phone pop pin is an 11 Gaming pop pin, so all the guys were asking me for one, so I ended up handing out, the 11 Gaming.
Can I get one?
Yeah, you can get one for sure. So everybody's passionate about gaming because it's universal. It's not restrictive. People love to escape, their day-to-day lives, and gaming provides an escape for a lot of people, and it doesn't restrict you at all. You see kids who idolize these entertainers, and they watch them all the time because they enjoy listening to them, and they provide an outlet for them to express themselves.
There's been a lot of, if you look up in this space, you'll see a lot of investments. Cloud9, which is one of the biggest teams, I think they closed a Series B in October, $50 million US. So there's, in the private markets, it really hasn't reached the public markets yet, a fair amount of hype in this space as far as teams go. I just want you to comment on whether or not you think the hype is justified behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're getting a lot of extremely high valuations on companies. They're almost being valued like tech companies in a way. And time will tell. Obviously, I'm really passionate about it. I think that a lot of the high valuations are coming from teams that have franchise models, and they're paying $30 million for a franchise or $10 million for a franchise, and they need the capital in order to do that. And we're not doing that at 11 Gaming. At 11 Gaming, we're focusing on building our network. We obviously have our pro team, which is a part of our network, to compete in the prize money. But we're really flexible because we're not betting on one game being the sole game. The interesting thing about esports, we touched about it a little bit, is that the game's owned by every game's owned by a publisher, and the game only does as well as the viewership's there, and publishers can make new games all the time. So if you're locked into one game, you're not flexible. With us, we have the flexibility to tell our pro players to play another game if it's more lucrative for us, and we have the flexibility to go into whatever game we choose. And I think that's really important, and that's something that doesn't lock you in.
Do you think that's a risk for other teams who maybe are doubling down on certain games, that there's an existential risk from the publishers?
Sure, there's always a risk. I think that the teams that are investing in franchises are banking that the viewership is going to grow and that the broadcasting rights are going to triple or tenfold their investment, because it's all about viewership. If their broadcasting rights If their game continues to grow and their esport continues to grow, then their broadcasting rights are going to be worth a lot, and obviously their investment's going to be worth a lot more than what they put in. But that's obviously a risk when you invest in anything, and in esports, because it's new and it's the wild west. There's obviously a lot that can happen.
Maybe just on the broadcasting note, I mean, I think most of us are probably familiar with traditional broadcasting. You watch the Super Bowl, it's going to be, I don't know who does it this year, maybe NBC. It's going to be one of the major U.S. networks. If you watch hockey, it's probably going to be CBC if it's here. Maybe talk a little bit about how broadcasting's done, compared to traditional sports for esports.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of it's done on Twitch, which is the online streaming service. Amazon bought Twitch for $1 billion. I don't know how many years ago. Before it was
4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. Yeah.
So they saw it as a good investment, and obviously it was, because it's worth a lot more than that now. And for esports right now, the majority of viewership is on Twitch, and players will play and stream their own channels, not just esports, just them playing recreationally, and they'll get upwards of thousands of viewers. You guys have all heard about Ninja, obviously, and he's not really a professional esports player. He's more of an entertainer, and he pulls in anywhere from 40 to 90,000 live viewers at a time. So he's getting paid by Twitch to do that, and that's what the network I'm talking about is. Obviously, Ninja might be an anomaly in a sense where not everybody's going to reach the heights of Ninja. But if you build a network of players who are a tenth of Ninja and you have 50 of them, well, then you have a pretty substantial network that you can go to a sponsor and sell. So I think that broadcasting rights for franchises could be sold. I think it's going to be online. I think it'll be on Twitch, and they could be sold for a crazy amount of money if the viewership's there. Maybe
just in case anybody in the audience doesn't know who Ninja is, give them 10 or 15 seconds on Ninja, the man.
Sure. Yeah, Ninja is an international superstar now. He's on the cover of ESPN. He was on Ellen DeGeneres. He's really the face of gaming right now. His current game is Fortnite because it's the most viewed game. That's where he got big. That's where his popularity exploded. And he is pulling in, you can look at the figures online, but it's reported anywhere to between $1 million to $5 million a month. I think it's pretty staggering. He gets paid for his viewership. So he'll post a video on YouTube and it'll get over 1 million views, and he'll get paid by YouTube. He'll stream on Twitch and he'll have 40 to 90,000 people watching him live for 12 hours straight, and he'll get a cut from that. And then in addition to that, he's also getting sponsor deals. He had an Uber Eats deal, he had a Red Bull deal, and these are just all things that he did as a sole by himself as an entertainer. So esports is a lot bigger than just franchise model and just gaming in general. It's an entertainment. It's an entertainment play as well. It provides people with the opportunity to capture an audience, and I think that's where the biggest value is.
Yeah, totally. And just on that, on the audience, I think the average age for esports viewers is about 25, 26. For NFL, MLB, that's 50 to 55. How do you see owners viewing that? We've seen some investments from Jerry Jones, Robert Kraft, high-profile investments. How do you see kind of owners viewing esports given the fanatical young fan base?
Yeah, I think they want to get more and more involved. I think that you've seen traditional sports owners invest in esports companies and in esports teams, in the franchise model, in organizational models. You've seen them try to bridge the gap in that way. Obviously, esports attracts a younger audience, an audience that a lot of people have been trying to reach for a long time and don't know how to, and esports is an outlet for that. And it's only growing. I mean, as the 25-year-olds get older, the younger generation continues to watch. I have a 16-year-old brother who doesn't watch TV. All he does is he's on his phone and his tablet. He plays Fortnite. He watches Fortnite on Twitch, and he watches YouTube videos, and that's his source of entertainment. Whereas, when I was 16, I was watching TV and I was watching shows. Now kids, all they do is consume media online, and esports is a way to consume media, online, not just competitions, but actually watching other people play. And I think that's a big barrier that people have to get their heads wrapped around, is that people enjoy watching other people play. It's a source of entertainment, and it's only growing.
In just to connect the dots here on traditional and esports, a lot of parallels when cannabis was starting to become a big thing, when it was starting to get legalized, were drawn between the history of the alcohol industry after prohibition and what happened with cannabis. So I think, in esports, a lot of people are pinning on what happened with traditional sports and what happened in esports. Maybe talk a little bit about, the parallels that you see between the two and some of the differences that you see between the two.
Sure, similarities, we've touched on upon them a little bit. With the franchise model, things are being run like a professional organization in the sense that you have coaches, managers, you have scouts, you have a marketing team selling sponsorship. You have all the workings of a traditional sports organization, along with your players. You're trying to take care of them. You're providing them with services. Some teams even go as far as providing them with a team house. That's not really traditional sports, but that's the way it is. So people are trying to do the same thing they do with traditional sports with esports. The main difference between the two would be the publisher. The publisher owning the game and owning the rights to the game and owning how they control the game and how the game's going to grow. Whereas in the NHL, the NFL, the NBA, MLB, nobody owns the game. In esports, people actually own the game. There's a company that owns the game and controls the direction of that game. And that can be scary at times, because if you don't have control over a game and you're investing X amount of dollars and you're really relying on that game, the people who are running that game to ensure that your investment's in a good place.
Harder to manipulate. If anybody's a Tom Brady fan, it's hard to deflate the ball to throw it around in the esports space. So maybe just a question on where you see yourself and 11 Gaming in the future, because a lot of esports right now is predicated on where everybody sees it going and where people see the gaming space going. Where do you see 11 Gaming in 5 years?
Yeah, it's a great question. Things in esports change day to day, and it's an ever-changing. What we do at 11 Gaming in 6 months, it's changed dramatically. We weren't never going to structure ourselves as a holdings company, but it made sense to when we saw that there was a possibility to acquire this company I keep talking about. But where I see 11 Gaming is I see it as not just an esports play, but as an entertainment play. I see it as the ability to exchange services with a player, to give them a platform to become the next Ninja in exchange for being able to sell sponsorship and have that facilitate that exchange, as well as continuing to grow the pro network. Monitoring to see what games make sense to go into. Right now it's Fortnite because the viewership's there and the prize money's there. It's $100 million, and that's something that's pretty crazy. But tomorrow it could be another game, and to have the flexibility to recognize which game is the right game to be in right now, and to be able to shift. So it's hard to say in 5 years what that's going to be. If it makes sense that we at 11 Gaming believe in a franchise model where it makes sense to put up money and do a raise to get into a franchise, then we can go do that as well. So there's a lot of options you can go down, and there's a lot of routes. And I've been asked a bunch about if you want to take the company public or whatnot, and only time can tell with regards to that. You have to see how the space evolves, I think.
So we're pretty much at the end here. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with?
Yeah, if you're excited about gaming, I'll be around. I'm free to talk. It's something that I'm really passionate about. We're just closing on a raise right now. Almond Wealth Management's facilitating the raise, and we're almost closing that. And it's an exciting time to be in esports. I'm excited about it. Thanks, Sean, for doing this. You're great, and really thank you all for listening.
Thanks, guys. Go Leafs.